Code Vein? The hell is this?
It's Weeaboo Souls!
What? What the fuck?
Hello folks, and as you can see, this is the debut of a new section in the channel, My 2 Gil, where I give you my opinion on recent reveals or developments around the gaming industry. And today, I wanted to talk about Code Vein. I recently watched the trailer revealed at the Tokyo Game Show for Code Vein, the latest Souls-like game, scheduled to come out in 2018 by publisher Bandai Namco, which for those of you that live under a rock, is the same publisher of Dark Souls. After watching it, I couldn't help myself, and I wound up making comparisons with Dark Souls, so I naturally gravitated onto thinking about the elements that made the Souls franchise a success, and what elements can be seen and which ones cannot be seen of what has been revealed so far of Code Vein. Now, if we want to effectively compare Dark Souls and Code Vein, we need to go back in time to 2011, an auspicious time when Harry Potter was still relevant, and we found ourselves shuffling every day. In order to understand why Dark Souls resonated so much with gamers back then, we need to take a look at the gaming landscape of that year. In 2011, we saw several staples of the gaming world as strong as ever. For example, the Batman Arkham series had not yet committed its greatest faux pas, and the Call of Duty style first-person shooter was still dominating the market. Apparently gamers back then were still not burned out on that formula. Now, Call of Duty even had two top sellers that year, Modern Warfare and Black Ops. Battlefield 3 and Gears of War 3 were also released and sold millions of copies that year, so shooters were very much present in the market. We also saw dance games like Just Dance 2 and 3 sell millions of copies that same year, as well as the same sports games we get every damn year. We're going strong with Pro Evolution Soccer, Madden, FIFA, you know the ones. The only RPG-based game that appeared in the top-selling list for that year was Skyrim, and compared to its predecessors Oblivion or Morrowind, one can clearly see a more simplified ideology from this game, so not so much RPG-ish. So it is amidst all of these titanic titles full of streamlined features, accessibility shortcuts, and casualized ideologies that Dark Souls, a title that lacked all of these friendly characteristics, carved for itself a little niche of the market. By March 2012, only 5 months after release, Dark Souls had sold 1.19 million copies worldwide, and by 2016, Dark Souls would end up selling over a whopping 8.5 million copies, which is quite the exploit considering the type of game that we are talking about here. Now, let's think about the reasons for this success. If we pay attention to the market in 2011, we can see that there was an oversaturation of shooters, dance games, and sports games, and the only big RPG hit released that year was Skyrim, as we mentioned before. We also got Dragon Age 2, but it did not make much of a splash, and it is now widely considered the weakest entry of the trilogy. One of the main aspects of the gaming landscape back then was the oversimplification of controls and the insidious hand-holding brought about by extended tutorials and even unimaginative and bland gameplay, just utilized in order to capture that ever-elusive casual market. The storytelling did not fare any better either, as games of this era were plagued with using copious amounts of exposition to reveal their narratives. It is amongst all of these circumstances that Dark Souls was released. Dark Souls, the spiritual successor of cult favorite Demon Souls, instead opted for a very different approach. In the world of Dark Souls, there is no hand-holding. The tutorial is almost non-existent, and there is no exposition in regards to the story, aside from a brief introduction at the beginning of the game. By doing that instead, the development team headed by Hidetaka Miyazaki managed to give us an experience in which the game reveals almost the entirety of its elements through gameplay. Environment clues, level design, and item descriptions. The game also became uncompromising with its difficulty, becoming extremely rewarding for those who stuck with it, and a complete hell for those who either were not able to overcome the challenges or did not have the mettle to retry and learn from their mistakes. By succeeding in using all of these tools, the story of Dark Souls relies heavily on interpretation by the player, and I believe this is the element that differentiates Dark Souls the most when compared with the myriad other so-called Souls-like games around the market. You can tell just by looking at the Dark Souls community that players have latched on to this method of storytelling, and being able to project one's ideas onto the game creates a greater attachment to it. But what does any of this have to do with Code Vein, you ask me? Well, there are a couple of elements that lead me to believe that there is no possible way that Code Vein will have the same level of success as Dark Souls did when it was first released. The first one is the gaming environment that it's going to be released in. Now, even though there are only 5 official Souls games, and yeah, I am including Bloodborne in this. It is from Software, it's Miyazaki, it has Souls elements in its gameplay. It's a damn Souls game, okay? Anyway, even though there are only 5 official Souls games, there have been a myriad others that have attempted to use the same formula with varying degrees of success. Lords of the Fallen, Neo, The Surge, hell, even 2D games like Salt and Sanctuary and Dark Mouse have extracted very heavy influences from Dark Souls, even if the last two do it on 2D. So we have a saturation of the market with this so-called Souls formula. Even though no one has done it as well as the original, if you ask me, but it is undeniable that Code Vein finds itself fighting for a spot in a more competitive environment at its release. The second element that I will discuss is the one that I think will impact the longevity of the game the most, the story. From what we can tell from the trailers that have been released so far, Code Vein opts for a more heavy-handed approach to the story, and it seems it will end up going hefty with the exposition. While this feature usually ensures that every player will understand the story, it also greatly hinders replayability and immersion, as one will not need to pay attention to every little detail of the game to reveal the secrets of its hidden lore, as one has to in Dark Souls. So there, in a nutshell, those are the 2 reasons why I believe Code Vein will not necessarily succeed in leaving an imprint in the industry as Dark Souls did back in 2011. Now I want to make it very clear that I do not mean here that the game will flop or that it will completely suck. All I'm saying is I do not think this game will ever amass the following that Dark Souls certainly has. Now there were other elements in the gameplay that I also noticed from the trailer that will, in my opinion, impact this game, like the repetitiveness and lack of variety of the enemies and patterns or the weapons. But to be honest, this game is scheduled to come out next year, and a lot could be done to change and add variety to them. However, the core presentation of the game and how its universe will unfold, I don't think that can be changed at this stage of the game. In my very humble opinion, I think this game will end up becoming like Neo or The Surge. Great games in their own right, but destined to remain in the shadow realm of the Souls-like game. That's it for today, folks. Now let me know what you think of this new segment, and if it's something that you would like to see more of, or if you would just want me to stop doing this. Also, if you enjoyed the video, consider giving it a thumbs up. And if you enjoy my content, subscribe for weekly videos. That will be it for today. These were my 2 Gil, and this is Cheps, and I will see you soon.